Welcome back to Dista Digital. We talk about today's video games and the classics that inspire them. I'm Brett Clark.
And I'm Matt Keaton, and this week we're joined by a special guest, Tim, as well as talking about outlining some of the biggest disappointments in gaming industry, and we're also looking to see if marketing is to blame.
Yes, and stay tuned for this week's Save Point, where we talk about your comments and read your questions, all here on Dista Digital. Well, Tim, welcome to the show. We're honored to have you on. Thank you so much for popping in today.
Definitely. Thank you both for having me. More than happy to help out.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that we're going to be discussing today is marketing when it comes to video games. I mean, for instance, I know, but for the viewers at home, you're a very big Destiny player, and we've all seen the Destiny expansion, the Destiny hype train, and then you play the expansion for a week and you see the numbers taper off. When it comes to marketing, like how do you feel the video game industry handles it?
So, like you said, I'm a huge Destiny fan, and I have been since Destiny 1. When it comes to the marketing of it, they promise the world, and they deliver next to nothing. They give you a small island. So they tell you about all the great expansions that they're going to give, the new gameplay, the new modes to play, and all the new content that there's going to be. And unfortunately, a lot of that becomes a flop, where a lot of it's basic gear that you aren't even going to use later on in the game. And you're also going to run into issues where all of the in-game prospects are going to be grinded so heavily that you basically have to pay for it, or if you aren't paying for it, you're going to end up driving yourself insane trying to get it all.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Matt? I know you were really eager to talk about this. We were using an application called Basecamp to actually organize this week's episode. You can thank the back end of Dista Digital. We got a great account going with them, not a sponsor, but we were able to communicate throughout the week, and Matt was really on top of it, and he just had a lot of stuff to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, Basecamp is a great thing that we're using to kind of connect and stay together. As far as marketing goes, if you want to touch on Destiny, I was a gamer who was completely thrilled with the whole scope and the original marketing and the video footage, the commercials of Destiny. Not only because it had a Halo-esque type quality of its music and its trailers, and it just spoke to you. It was the breath of fresh air that promised to be different than the Call of Duties. It promised to be different and something new. And for the most part, I enjoyed it until I kind of got into it and really realized deeper that there was a lot more to come, and this was something that was more long-term. It was a game that I didn't realize it was kind of a games-as-service game. With more down the pipeline. I expected it to be a full package right off the bat. So it was highly disappointing, but it was still a good quality game that I enjoyed for countless hours. And I just my only thing is I kind of feel bad I didn't get to experience much of the second game because I just kind of lost interest at that point. But Destiny 1 was something that had really high hopes and really high ceiling, and I just don't think that it reached that potential. I think the sequel's kind of in the same boat, where now they're finally putting out all these cool expansions and all these reasons to get in on it. Not to mention Microsoft has kind of brought it in, and it's okay, come here, you can be with us too, and put it in the Game Pass, and all the expansions are downloadable, playable, you don't have to pay anything for them. That's nice, because that kind of gives me a second chance to review it, play it, talk about it, and just share with the world. And from what I've launched and what I've played upon redoing it, and Tim's been kind of the motivation for me to play it, I've kind of seen some new things, and I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing with the direction that they're taking. And that's Destiny, for marketing for Destiny in a nutshell, has been that way. It's just been kind of all over the place, in your face, like you said, offering a lot and promising a lot, offering little by little bites. And it's kind of how it is with a lot of games. I mean, they overhype. If you look at Duke Nukem, on how many that was like a decade or longer in development, and then the end product was something that was just a fractured mess of all these different parts put together to make a game. And for the game to look 10 years old and to come out 10 years later was pretty sad state. You look at like marketing for Colonial Marines and that disaster, alienating their fan base, things like that. There's a lot of games we could go down and talk about today, but I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, did you know about the Colonial Marines, why the game was so bad?
Not originally.
As far as the AI?
Not originally.
I didn't share this on the podcast with you?
Mm-mm. Well, you might have, but I don't.
There's a typo in the coding, and it prevented the AI from being able to spawn in different locations and be tethered to a different point based on where the player was. It was all a typo. And so when you fix it, like it supposedly made the game much better. That's like the myth, and it's actually a true like myth. Like there is actually a spelling error inside all the code. One spelling error messed up the game.
Mm-hmm.
But back to like games like Duke Nukem that are like 10 years in the shoot. What do you think? Why do you think marketing is effective in the video game industry for something that long? I mean, like normally in today's society, we think that everyone has kind of a short attention span. And what is the benefit of releasing something and saying, yeah, you guys will get it when you're like 10 years older, when you might not be interested in video games anymore, or you have time to develop a different taste in something else? Like, what do you guys think the company benefits from that?
So my personal experience with this is whenever it comes to marketing, they overpromise and underdeliver, just like Matt said earlier. So they give you like the most crisp, awesome like video for it, where it gives you content and graphics and audio, just the sound. They probably have tons of money that they've spent just to get that high quality image to you. And then when you see that, and it's literally just a cutscene from the actual gameplay, and the gameplay is so much just worse off, they take all that time because they also are taking feedback like, oh, so people are really hyped about the guns that were shown, like Borderlands 3, for instance, where they showed all these different guns and tons of loot and tons of content, and then you were able to beat the game in like 2 days. It wasn't enough content there to really keep people coming back. So when you get something early on, it's kind of like hey, it's in development, and they want to see, they're pretty much testing the waters for, hey, is this really going to be popular? Is this really going to sell well? Or is it going to be more along the lines of, we're kind of testing and seeing, do we want to sink money into this or not? So my personal experience with it, games publishers especially need to stop trying to rush production on something just because it gets a lot of early hype, where the game comes out half-baked and it's not even playable, like Colonial Marines, like Warcraft 3 Remastered.
No Man's Sky. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think for me, when I think of E3, this isn't really a marketing thing. It's kind of a marketing thing. It wasn't super long in the shoot, but Watch Dogs. Like you look at that original Watch Dogs E3 trailer, and you look at that game and you go, wow, that game's gorgeous. And you look at it and it almost looks like there's ray tracing back in whenever this was released, like 2012 or whatever it was. And the game looks phenomenal. And then you get the actual game and it's horrible looking, and there's never been anything close to getting to that E3 graphics for that game, even on PC. Like you have to do so many mods in order to get it. And I think I get it that marketing's supposed to market it to you and like get you excited about it, but at some point I feel like, is it too effective? Like does the hype build up too much to then have like a Cyberpunk situation? What do you think, Matt?
Absolutely. So Watch Dogs, they showed the early trailers and the game looked phenomenal, fantastic. Okay. I ignored all that. I just put it out of my mind, didn't even care about it. And I ignored everything pre-marketing, got the game, played the game, loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was a breath of fresh air. It was not trying to be a Grand Theft Auto clone, but it kind of was. But it had its own take on it. And for me, I love the story of Aiden Pierce and the whole situation. I stayed away from the marketing, loved the game. And then it was ruined for me by looking at all the media, the social media stuff going on. And then all of a sudden, people throwing it in their face out in social media. Hey, look at what this game is supposed to be. And look at what it is now. And for me, that was just terrible, because for me, it ruined the entire thing, thinking, well, this great game I just played really doesn't live up to what it was supposed to be. So did I just get shammed, or was this just, hey, do you just forget about it and just move on? And that's why I kind of just accepted it, and I just didn't care. And I think people get bent out of shape because they have high expectations. But I think it's a double-edged blade. I think marketing, there's a lot of trickery. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's like being a magician. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it where it's smoke and mirrors, and you put your best foot forward. You put some computer enhanced graphical trailer together, it's CGI and all this stuff, and then you get the final game and the God rays are taken off because of ray tracing not being invented yet and whatever. Mm-hmm. And they dumb the game down and make it runnable on consoles. Majority of consumers for games, play them on console first, and then so if you take a PC game and you put it on TV commercial, and then you get the game home, you're disappointed because you're playing something that's not capable of those types of graphics, those types of enhancements. You play Skyrim on the console versus on PC. Anybody has, darn well what I'm talking about as far as graphic capability, and it's a huge disappointing step down. So I think it's partly the consumers buying into it and being fooled and being kind of naive about it, but it's mostly on the marketing side of, hey, this is what we have, this polished little thing. I think they should stop doing that, honestly. I think they should legitimately show the real product, because that makes people more forgiving of saying, hey, look, Fallout 76, prime example. It's a good point you brought up E3. Nothing upsets me more than watching those videos, not only because they shouldn't have to exist, but watching and listening to Mr. Dum Dum on stage. Oh, we're going to have ray tracing and 3D environmental effects. And that stuff is not needed. I don't want to hear somebody get on stage and barf out all of the specs that the game is going to provide and go, oh, well, this game is going to do all this. And then look at what it didn't do. It was a Fallout 4 copy and paste clone. It was clunky, buggy, horrible online experience for everyone. You can't even trade the game in at GameStop after launch. You buy the game, they wouldn't take it back. They immediately stopped trading it in. Best Buy wouldn't take it. It's kind of like when you buy those the Fortnite disc that I bought, the free-to-play game on the disc. There's no value. It immediately lost its value with its fan base. And it's sad when games like Cyberpunk. Now, Cyberpunk is like a whole episode, another one we're going to need to talk about that marketing, because that was smoke and mirrors and that was BS. They changed the characters, they changed the mission structure, dude. If you go out there and look at the YouTube videos, they changed everything about the game entirely after 2 years ago? Even?
Yeah, let's not rip on them too much. I love CD Projekt Red. I mean,
well, hey, I love them because of the Witcher series. So,
do you think? Okay, so back to kind of like marketing here. Do you think that they won't be able to recover from this? Do you think that they, no matter what they market in the future, they'll be able to make over whatever Cyberpunk
CD
has done?
Projekt Red will be fine. They'll fix it. I've just booted it up on console again and played it, and I had the T-pose again and some of the funny bugs after the big 1.11 patch. But here's the thing. It's like The Witcher. The Witcher was not a perfect game, but over time, they gave you free stuff, and they kind of, the whole package got better. And, Xbox, the game performs better and runs much smoother and faster, makes experience even better. PC is the ultimate experience. CD Projekt Red, play the original Witcher. It is horrible looking, but the story's there. Play The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings. That game is fantastic. Wasn't marketed nearly enough, in my opinion. Their pedigree states that they put out things that maybe aren't stellar, but they work on it and they make it better. And definitely they could have benefited from being more baking in the oven with the game for sure in development. I think that CD Projekt Red will recover. I just think they almost just kind of went under because of the what do you call it? The shareholders, stockholders, shareholders, whatever, pushing for the release of the game. Could have potentially been
I'm one of them, Matt. I'm a shareholder, Matt, of CD Projekt Red.
Nice. You're to blame, sir.
I'm the blame.
No, so like the investment side of it is kind of rears its ugly head, in my opinion, in that state, and that's why the game got pushed out too early. They were saying everyone in the dev team was upset that the game was being released ahead of time because it still needed at least another 6 months to a year in development.
So, the caveat on just the caveat on that. Perfect example of E3's biggest flaws. When Blizzard announced that they were going to do the Warcraft 3 digitally remastered, the thumbstick that they plugged in was a 4K video file. What came out was 1080p tops. Like, it wasn't even the 3120 by 2960. It wasn't anywhere close to what was shown at E3. So everybody's expectations went through the roof after seeing the player models completely redone and, HDR on it. And then the game comes out, and not only was the graphics nowhere close to what was promised, the audio files weren't digitally remastered. They had game-breaking bugs that caused issues for players to even just complete the game. And they really push all of the hype. And then I would agree that shareholders are a big part of it, but publishers are also to blame. And Destiny was my big example for that, where when they were under Activision before they got released to be their own publisher, they signed a contract, and the contract was unrealistic. It was supposed to be at minimum two full games with 3 expansions each, and they were supposed to have a third game in development. When they announced Destiny 2, that was actually all supposed to be more expansions for Destiny 1. Destiny 2 was not intended to be that game. Mm-hmm. Everything that was on release, even to the Trials of Osiris, like the Osiris expansion on there, that was all supposed to be Destiny 1. And the way that they butchered that was just atrocious. And the ideas behind it were good. Like, I get it, the publisher is the one backing it. You have to kind of do what the contract says. But when you look at games that are made today and marketing for it, they promise the world, they give you an island. So the upside is a year down the road, to Matt's kind of explanation of it, you had games like No Man's Sky, practically unplayable when you got it. However, 6 months to a year later, they do all the expansions, they give you more content. Now it's a multiplayer great game that has actual storyline and a basis, where you went from basically the only solo game with billions of light years where you can hold a direction of travel at top speed for a month and never see the same planet again. That was what it was promised, but that meant that it was so repetitive that even though it was new places, it was the same content nonstop. So they made it multiplayer compatible. Mm-hmm. So expanding on things is good, but I think less marketing and more of the Steam approach would be my personal preference, because all these early access, all of these beta titles, where they're taking feedback from the player base that are finding these bugs, that are experiencing it, and then they're able to recreate it in their kind of like their production studio and fix those kind of on site, makes it so much better. So when the game actually launches and you're paying full price for a game, you know what to expect, and you're going to get that basically digitally remastered version of it from the alpha and the beta and the early access that you had. So you kind of, your expectations aren't too high, but you're enjoying the game for what it is and expanding on it with your own input. You actually feel like you're a herd member of the gaming community at that point.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I was actually going to bring that up because the video game industry is over $180 billion. And so marketing is a big contributor to that. You know, you got to be able to push a game. You got to be able to market a game to an audience so they know it exists. And one of the things that I always think about is early access games on Steam all the time. A couple of the games that me and Matt have gotten are early access. Like, developers will reach out and say, hey, can you make a video on this or something? We play it and we can make a video on it and discuss it. And it's an early access game because they want to build hype for it. They want to get feedback. They want to have the ability to look at investors and say, look, this is how many people are playing it. This is why we need more money so we can push and meet the demands of who's actually playing it. Valorant, for instance, did a very good job on marketing, making it exclusive to get into the beta, something very similar to Overwatch when it first came out. People were trying to like hand over fist, and so many people were trying to get a code for that. You know, it was ridiculous. You could sell your codes away for Valorant for early access beta, and people would pay thousands of dollars just to play Valorant. And in that situation, like, the hype is from the exclusivity of it and people wanting to play it, and then the game actually being good, people want to continue to play it, you know. And that's, I think, something where, like you said with Steam, the ability to have early access games is nice, and it's becoming more and more common because, you know, people now, instead of spending $60, they'd rather put in $20 early, see how the game is, and then because, you know, X amount of people bought it super early, the game's able to become a $60 game, you know, like PUBG and Fortnite, for instance. Fortnite's still free to play, but PUBG ended up becoming still a $60 game, I think it is, or a $30 game, but it was astronomically less expensive to buy it up front when it was early access, and the game was horrible. It was potato looking, but it was one of the most fun games I've ever played. And so dropping in 500 hours into that game when it came time for like, expansions, like DLC, the gotcha mechanics for like cosmetics, I was willing to put in because I saved a crap ton of money in the upfront cost of it. And I think that that's something where, marketing, if done right, can be super effective, and you'll make more money on the back end with a long-time consumer than someone who just buys your game for $60 and then doesn't actually play the content. Like look at mobile games, for instance. I mean, mobile gaming is more popular than like console PC gaming. It's like at 51% due to surveys. And what's crazy about that is, what's the first game that comes to mind when you think of a mobile game? Either of you.
Like Pokemon Go or like
Candy Crush.
You thinking?
I was thinking of Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh God!
The ad you see on YouTube. Yeah, you see the ads all the time on YouTube. Now that is something where, they spent so much money to get like YouTubers to talk about it, so much ad revenue for that, and then on top of that, they're paying YouTube to like put ads in front of every video, and then you see things like AFK Arena, and then you see like Idle Arena, and I can't tell you how many stupid ads I see for these games where it's like, what? Don't choose this archer. Oh, you chose this archer. Well, in Idle Arena, I'm like, okay, dude, like, I'm not gonna buy your product. But it's marketing at the end of the day. They're throwing it out in front of me. There was one ad that I saw that said, if you download the game, you will no longer see the ad.
I saw that exact same ad. Hilarious.
And so it's like, I'm kind of half tempted to, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want to give them that gratification that their marketing strategy worked. As someone who works in marketing, it's like, I don't want to do that, like,
well,
because that's almost too good. It's too good of a
is
strategy.
an over sexualization of targeting teenagers on Facebook, because like I scroll Facebook not only for a few things, not only because that's where Just the Digital has its presence, but also my family and friends and past coworkers I no longer work with, and people I've met over the years. We can still stay in touch and still be relevant with each other. And when I'm scrolling through the feeds, I see nothing but like a butt jiggling walking, and then it's a zombie game, and there's like a
state of survival. This is what he's talking about. The fact that I know that is really sad.
Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. Like the marketing. This is an area where marketing is disgusting, and marketing is just ridiculous. Is that when you're just trying to scroll through and you're just trying to look at stuff, and it's just kind of like, it's an insult to your intelligence as a gamer, like that they're targeting. And when I was a teenager, they weren't marketing stuff like that towards me then. So like, why is this all of a sudden an ever presence where, oh, we got to get these teenage boys downloading this game because boobs on the screen? And it's kind of like, what, and it, like there's a war game like World of Tanks or something, and there's busty like ladies who are tank commanders. Like, get out of here. That doesn't belong in the game. But that's my opinion of why marketing, it can be shameful. And if it doesn't represent the product. It's like a used car salesman with a Caboner car who knows he's trying to sell it for, $1,500. He knows the car he just bought for $200 is not worth the $1,500, but he slaps it. Oh, ain't she a beaut? You know that meme? Okay, yeah. You get it.
I love that.
That's
meme.
what I'm talking about. Like, it's disgusting, and it's an insult to your intelligence as a gamer. But a lot of people are just naive enough and dumb enough to download it and, buy into the microtransactions. And what I laugh at is I'm thinking of the parent's credit card actually crying in tears and like crumpling in on itself, because that's where the money's going to go. The microtransactions of those games. There might be free to play, but because little Timmy thinks busty women are in the game, he's going to spend more money on microtransactions. And it's just so stupid. But yeah, like as far as mobile gaming goes, I don't want to get into it, for one, because I just don't have the time during the day to whip out my phone and play on it. And at best, I look at stuff and research on my phone for the podcast, or I check out some gameplay. I check out, not to plug us, but some of our videos and some of Sir Solma's videos on Twitch and stuff like that. So I use my phone for like more of an entertainment, not to just sit and play, but that's just me.
No, and I think a lot of people are kind of in there with you, where the old saying, sex sells. I don't know if I can say that without having to censor it later. We'll have to look into terms and conditions of YouTube or whatever. We're explicit. It don't matter. Anyways, but one of the things that I think with those types of games. You know, they're the demographic that you think they're hitting, which is teenage boys. I hate to say this, it may sound a little racist coming from me, but I am Asian. They're trying to go for the Asian demographic, and the reason is because a majority of mobile gamers are in the Pacific region. That's why if you look at League of Legends champion roster for their mobile game, it's a majority of female, like, you know, K-pop idol sort of style anime girls, because they're trying to go towards the male Asian demographic. I'm not trying to be racist. That's just what it is. It's obvious. It's statistical. As a fellow Asian, I don't mind it. But
It makes sense.
yeah, but that's where they're trying to get it, is they're trying to go for, you know, young American boys as well, European boys, whatever. But at the same time, like, it's kind of weird that they're going all in, you know, with that strategy. You know, it's not let's try to hit everybody. Let's just really focus in on this one category, because they have the numbers and the money to back it up that these people are going to buy their product and sustain that product, you know. And one of the things that I think really hurts a game being put out 10 years in the past, we talked about E3 earlier, is that it leaves time for not just disappointment, but for the entire product to change. Prime example being Final Fantasy 15. Final Fantasy 15 was originally supposed to be 13 versus 2, which is supposed to be like an expansion or a spin-off of Final Fantasy 13. And as most people who've played Final Fantasy know, Final Fantasy 13 is not the most beloved, even though I love it, you know. But it had 3 games: Final Fantasy 13, 13-2, and then Lightning's Return. So obviously they were putting a lot of development, a lot of research into this, like, anthology, you know, this whole idea of crystals. And so Final Fantasy 15 was originally supposed to be that. But after backlash from that game, they completely scrapped it, and they left a couple of design changes from the original, you know, and they just said, yeah, let's get rid of these giant crystals and make one crystal, you know, one crystal that controls the whole city, you know, and protects it. We'll just leave that, you know. But they had to scrap the whole entire thing because they were afraid that Final Fantasy 13 would tarnish it, you know. It would hurt a game that they'd spent almost 11 years on in the shoot, you know, putting out. Can you think of any other examples like that, Tim, where a game completely changed from what it was originally promised?
Definitely. So another great example of that would be like Dead Island. Dead Island 1, and then they came out with Riptide, and then they had 2 where they announced it more than 10 years ago, and now you can't hardly find any information about it. The last thing that you can find is a tweet from one of the production managers there that was like, it's still coming, we just don't know when. So, like, it kept getting put on the back burner, and other games came out, and a perfect example for why they keep putting it off is because they need that marketing to really spike for them. And it's hard to compete in certain categories. So zombie games, I mean, they're a dime a dozen. You got Dead by Daylight, you've got 7 Days to Die, you've got so many DayZ, so many different zombie games that are out there. It makes it a lot more challenging to just release something into the market without having its own, like, little niche to say it's better in this category for this reason. And a prime example of that was like Titanfall. Titanfall was a great game. A lot of people enjoyed it. But when it came out, right in between Call of Duty and Battlefield, no, it got overlooked because nobody wanted to spend $180 buying all 3. So you've got prime time for when it to come out, and it actually was supposed to be slated several times, and they just kept, it's going to be later. And it's probably changed from the original E3 viewing of a trailer to what it is probably going to be when it comes out. It's going to be an entirely different game than what anybody thinks it is, if it does eventually come out. That would be my main example of how something that was shown early completely changes 180 degrees, or Anthem, where you get shown something that's so graphically beautiful and just meant to really challenge what the status quo is of a game like that, and to 180 it and just make it a generic, like, dumbed down, not even that fun to play, load zone after zone after zone. And that was the main thing. It was supposed to be this open world expansive universe with great graphics, and it's 90% load times.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
Uh, Dead Island 2 is I could touch base a little bit on that. So the reason why Dead Island 2 is an example as well is that they've changed developers a few times, and so they brought it back for the final steps to Deep Silver Dam Buster Studios, and what they're doing that's located in the UK, and it opened like in 2014. They just brought it over last 2019, and actually, as of a day ago on Twitter, everywhere they're advertising that they're hiring programmers and people for the studios. And so the reason why the game is, again, like you said, it's being baked and it's being baked is because they're definitely trying to take the same approach he's mentioning, is that they want to like knock it out of the park, and obviously having basically they also, by the way, are the same developer that took over Homefront in 2014. So they have a lot of lessons to learn from that game as well, because that was just an utter disaster, Homefront Revolution and all that.
Yeah, it's like in the dollar clearance bin at Walgreens.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Who buys a video? Do you buy a video game at Walgreens?
I don't know. CVS, is that universal? Is that just a Midwest thing as well? I know Menards
CVS
is a Midwest thing. I don't know. Tim's from Texas, just like you, but Tim's probably been down there a little longer. Do you guys have Walgreens and CVS down there?
So Walgreens actually was its own company until CVS bought out a majority of it. So I mean, you can still find Walgreens, but CVS is the predominant, like it's everywhere.
What about 7-Elevens?
7-Elevens, they're here, but they're few and far between. It's Exxon, Chevron, Texaco. Exxon just opened up a new corporate thing here, but different time, different story.
Yeah, for sure. But no, the reason I bring that up is because like when you brought up that game and you say like they were in charge of Homefront, I immediately rolled my eyes. I immediately had that taste in my mouth of bad developer or a bad game, and it comes back to marketing at the end of the day. Is what you're doing is you're hyping up your game, but does the studio or the publisher that make it just by having someone touch it and having it underneath their brand, do you think that helps sometimes more than the actual like advertisements? Like Nintendo, for instance, releases only gold,
Well, Nintendo for the most part releases only gold. There are some flops, but their flops are so few and far between. I mean, maybe one flop per decade, and that's usually just due to the fact that Mario Party has its own like lordship and fan base, and if Mario Party is not on point, it's trash to them. And so I've personally enjoyed all of the Mario Parties. Yeah, things could have been better, but Nintendo drops gold, and the reason is they spend decades planning, programming. They've got the money up front for it. It's not like they're hurting. They've already kind of been the innovators in technology. They just haven't been able to really capture, and I think they've done it intentionally. They haven't been able to capture PC quality games as far as hardware is concerned. But I think that that's not their niche. Their niche is to be family friendly and kid friendly and put them on as many screens as possible. And that's why I think they've put out gold, because their technology has been scaled such that they're not trying to look the best and the brightest. They're trying to be the most compatible and playable and have the most replay value. And I mean, when you look at replay value, nobody has replay value like Nintendo as far as games go. Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, even single player games like Luigi's Mansion, where the games are structured and you have to go back to the point of origin to open a door that you couldn't before, or things like that. So they're very intelligent in their level design and their game design, and things like Breath of the Wild just take the cake and run with it. And then that's kind of like where Immortals Phoenix Rising has kind of come out of the woodwork and been a success, but it's been because it's kind of following the Nintendo suit. And so I think marketing is to blame for a lot of the failures, but I think it takes a little bit too much credit for the successes too. And I think that in the long run, I think it's just best practice to put out an honest product. The thing I hate is gameplay footage. I don't want to see early gameplay. I don't want to see, and they did that. Do you remember that game, The Punisher?
No, I don't actually.
The Punisher, they made this game based off of like the movie character from Thomas Jane and with the movie with John Travolta and whatnot. They made it kind of based off that rugged style of the Punisher, but then instead of that's how they marketed it. But when you got the game, it was completely Punisher from the comic books, just a run around gore fest, taking a hardware drill and just impaling a guy with it and throwing a guy across the. There was so many cool things you could do to people, but then at the end of the day, that's not what they marketed it as. They marketed it as there was this huge morale system, and like you had to weigh the morality of things. And in the end, you just were looking for ways to creatively kill people. So things like that. I just really wish they would just stop showing things and just say, hey, we've got this coming out. And like for Cyberpunk, that whole deep dive early on a couple of years ago that they shot themselves in the foot with. I get that they changed the direction, but if they were going to do that, they should have come out and said, hey guys, this is how our game looked, but we feel for quality purposes and for best fitting the fans, we decided to go with this. Or they could have even asked us, because personally, the Cyberpunk characters from 2 years ago looked phenomenally better than what it actually came out with. And that's, I think, where marketing hurts them, because if they have to make a last-minute technical decision to scrap something or to add something, it looks bad if you don't advertise it. It looks bad if you don't actually show that until the game comes out and it's, what's this? And I think that's where people get upset. Not to mention another thing, too. We all have a backlog of games. We all have a crap ton of games. Why are people jumping in on these lawsuits against Cyberpunk when we have 50,000 other games we can play? Well, I don't get it. That's one thing that frustrates me, because marketing is to blame for that. Marketing is to blame as to why people are getting so butthurt that they're suing a video game company because they spent $60 on the game. Go flip it. Go trade it. Or better yet, use it as a coaster. Why are you so upset about it? That's one thing that irks me, is people think they have the right to sue a production company over something that was released. I can understand the market share side of it with investors and stuff like that. But gamers, consumers, I mean, dude, go play something else. Man. Just my opinion.
Tim, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I got a couple things just to touch on that you went over. So I'll start kind of at the front of what you started with, which was Nintendo produces gold. I agree 100%. The reason being is because when you look at PlayStation and you look at Xbox, especially early on for kind of the release titles, you've got Final Fantasy, you've got all of the major Tales games that came out for only PlayStation, you've got story-driven JRPG, absolutely wonderful writers that came out with PlayStation. So it was the single-player story adventure mode. That is what it was known for, and they try to recreate their image all the time because they want to hit more and more of a fan base. Nintendo has not changed from the original NES till today when you're playing that Switch, whether it's the GameCube, the Super Nintendo, the N64, anything in between, the Wii's, all of those have always been generated and made for kids. Their game's player base was made for that. Now, Sony tried to get away from that RPG style for a little while when they started. They actually had exclusive rights to Street Fighter. Perfect example. They wanted to break into that fighting game category. They wanted to break into the show where they were like, oh, we can do sports too. So they're trying to hit a bigger player base, and the number one issue that people heard with Xbox is, oh, they have phenomenal hardware. Now they just need games. So they went out and they bought Fable's entire thing just got relicensed, in case you didn't notice. During the last E3, spoiler alert, there's a new Fable coming down the pipeline. Fable was a very hard-selling game for a very long time, even though 3 was kind of a flop until they came out with the Fable Adventures. People, it still had kind of a cult following. And when they bought out all those publishers and those studios to really reinvent Rare, to kind of come out with their own take on things, I think they're going to end up coming down the pipeline with some brand new, this is just personal opinion, not anything that, exclusive insider trading or nothing like that. But I think Xbox is going to have some new exclusives coming down the pipeline that are going to blow everybody away.
Yeah, they so if you've ever played Sigmund's Sacrifice or Sonia's Sacrifice, whatever it's called, I can't pronounce her name. Sorry, game. But she has not schizophrenia. Yeah, it's schizophrenia. She hears multiple voices, and that's an exclusive to the Xbox One X. And I'm actually kind of excited for that because I love that game. It was really good. It was really well done. It reminded me a lot of, well, actually, A Plague's Tale reminds me a lot of it, just the art style in the game. But I think you're right. Xbox does have a potential to, with what it's acquired, to be able to make something great. Nintendo does recreate the magic every single time. It's almost like Disney, they keep on recreating the magic, per se. But with that being said, I think it's time to get into the save point, guys.
Save point.
All right. So, Matt, this week's save point, we've got a couple of messages from Tim. Tim, hide yourself because you can't be here for reading your messages.
By the way, before we get into that, I love his camera feed. His camera feed looks like he's on a night raid. He's planning this night raid that they're gonna go and do this Black Ops mission. I love it. It's mysterious. I love it.
Yeah. So, anyways, thank you, Tim, for being on here. We do appreciate it. We weren't originally supposed to have him on today, but I got caught up and he just happened to be in the Discord. I'm like, hey, how about we just have him on today? So, improvising, people. But Matt, you want to read today's topics?
Absolutely. So it's actually a two-parter. He's got two comments. One from one of our episodes says, last episode, it says, great podcast. Thanks for using the topic. I am eagerly awaiting the next one coming down the pipeline. I don't mind y'all calling me Tim if you want. I'm happy to help with anything I can for this series because I always look forward to this each week. Let me know if you guys hear anything I can do for y'all. Sorry, have anything. And I was going to say, hey, I appreciate that, but are you going to get sick of hearing yourself in your own videos?
No, so I'm not exactly the biggest egomaniac where I want to hear myself talk, but part of being a streamer, I stream on Twitch from time to time. You just kind of have to, especially if you're thinking about doing YouTube editing those videos. You're going to hear it a lot more than just once. So
yeah,
hearing myself, I mean, it'll be kind of fun, especially to see the direction that editing takes. It'll be kind of fun to hear it all and see how it comes back.
Mm-hmm. Tim, do you want to do yourself a big solid and give yourself a URL or a shout out to where we can watch you on Twitch?
So you can definitely find me on twitch.com/SirSolna, and you can follow me on Twitter as well, /SirSolna.
Man, we're working with amateurs here. You should have instantly plugged yourself, Tim. You got to take all the opportunities you can get to plug yourself. But other than that, it's
and
just
his second comment. We can't leave that out.
Oh yeah.
This was my 1 hour video special from my 8 hour painstaking slaving over a keyboard and mouse Warzone extravaganza from yesterday. It says, "Get them wins in the Warzone, bro." Hey, I tried, man. I tried. Best I could do is 9th with 13 kills, but I had a blast. Appreciate y'all showing some love and support. Everybody, we got 2 new followers because of it. So
awesome. Also, big shout out to you. Even after he got through with Warzone, I recently bought Cold War, and for some reason that decided to delete my Warzone when I was trying to jump on with him to help him get that W. Unfortunately, because of that, we had to re-download it, and it was going to take forever, almost 2 hours, because it's a very large game apparently. And we ended up playing Cold War, and we consistently finished top 2, averaging more than 30 kills. So,
baby.
No, look at you boys.
He's got some skills. It's just trying to get higher and better. That's how it works.
There you go. I'll let you guys do your little victory dance there, everybody. If you guys want to watch Matt and Sursona play, you know where to find Sursona, but you can find Matt on the Digital Facebook page. Just go to facebook.com/Digital, and you can watch him there, and you can leave us some stars, and get us Facebook certified or whatever the heck it's called. Matt knows more about that stuff than I do.
Level Up Club, but yeah, I just need another stream with 4 hours, and we'll be good to go. We got to keep it up each week, so good. Looking forward to some more content for sure.
Yeah, I'm an old soul. I don't really use Facebook like that, unfortunately. But anyways, guys, if you have a topic or a comment you want to have us read here on the podcast, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter with the hashtag #DisToDigital, or reach out to us on our social medias. But speaking of social medias, Discord. If you noticed on our Discord, we have a level system, level 100 boss, level 50 boss, and that takes us right back into the marketing side of video games. Have you ever played those games where it's like level 50 mob boss, level 10 mob boss? Those ads, have you seen those? That's a direct a direct shout out for that. I don't like that game. It's kind of goofy. So if you ever notice that in our Discord, that's a marketing thing. So closing off the episode this week, where do you guys want to see marketing in the future? Matt started with it as far as like, honesty coming from the developers. But I mean, apart from honesty, like, is there anything else you want to see? I mean, what do you think, Tim?
So personally, I'm gonna have to contradict him. I love seeing gameplay. The reason being is because it's realistic. It's what you can expect from the game. I hate seeing cinematics in a game. Why? Because whenever that shows in the trailer, the cinematic, it's usually the most action-packed, adventurous, great-looking, audio-filled, cinematic you'll ever see. And then you get the game, and you're expecting that kind of wow and punch of the gameplay, and you wind up with something that almost looks like Minecraft at certain points, where you don't get those graphics, you don't get that kind of audio attention that they give during those marketing. Like, we want it to look the best, and then the actual gameplay, because the game can't be a terabyte in size, they have to compress, they have to shrink, they have to quality control, and make everything fit onto a single game platform where it's small enough that a person can download it in a day. So I love seeing gameplay. I hope that they give a more realistic view of what the games are, so that they don't overhype the game, that you don't have issues where they're getting lawsuits for false advertising of, you said that this was going to be in the game and it's not, so I wouldn't have bought it if it hadn't. Stuff like that. Look, you have to measure your expectations. Marketing's always going to go above and beyond what they say they're going to do versus what you're actually going to get. Now, I agree there are certain things that are just unforgivable, like, I hate to go back to it, but Warcraft 3, digitally remastered, we're going to make it 4K, it's 1080p. We're going to remaster the audio and have all new audio files. No, you didn't. We're going to make the game even better than it used to be. No, it's almost the same game, and in fact, you had a bug in your coding that didn't even let you beat the game for almost a month before y'all fixed it. So, quick response times, being able to actually respond to things, I like that a little more. Like we talked about earlier, early access, betas, kind of where the people are actually looking for honest feedback, just like y'all do here at Disc to Digital, where you get those comments and then you take it under advisement and improve on that. All of those small things are noteworthy and mean that the people actually care about what's coming out. I think that's where I want to see marketing go, where they actually take feedback constructively, and instead of being offended and trying to say, how dare you question our game's quality, say, you know what, I agree, maybe we could do it better if we did it that way. That's what I would love to see from game developers, publishers, studios. All of that would be so much better, in my opinion, if they were just honest, like Matt said, but measure your expectations for what's actually going to be in the game. Mm-hmm. Maybe not show the full opening like they did with 2077, where it just went 180 degrees the other direction, but I would say Breath of the Wild's perfect example. For their trailer, they showed you walking through the world to show you the art style, the shadow, the wind, the moving trees, and the enemies, and that was all realistic. Like, that wasn't just a trailer that they hyped up and maximized all their graphics for. It actually was that game. And it felt great to not have those, oh, you passed this river, enjoy this 15-minute load time now. Mm-hmm. That was a realistic thing, and I was super happy to see it. In the future, that's the number one thing for me. Honesty, and show me what I'm actually going to get, not the most hyped, overly upgraded thing that you can, and then when I play it, it isn't what you say it is.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you. Like, one of the things with Halo Infinite was people had a lot of backlash. Like, what are you showing? They were just showing in-game engine footage, not gameplay, but in-game engine. So that's what the game's going to look like in the background or in the world, And I kind of agree with you there, where it's like, I like to see it, but at the same time, I do want to get an idea of a sampling of the story. Sometimes that right there, like with Nier Automata, that story in the trailer is what got me hooked to it. And then I played it and I didn't understand it, and I put it down for a year, and then I came back to it and I loved it, But Matt, what about you? What do you want to see in the future?
Honestly, I want to see games like Anthem not be so overhyped and just to be shown for what it is, a games of service game. And I just feel like games like that, like I wish we would get to a point where they would just put out games in a beta state, like have a consistent thing. Like find a way to do it on consoles where instead of having the full retail discs, maybe just advertise it as, hey, this is such and such beta. And not for every game. I'm not talking about AAA titles that spend years under the oven, under the light. I'm talking about games like Anthem or games now. Anthem, they just broke news that they've shut down development of their re-cooking Anthem version 2 or whatever they were working on, and they shut it down to make efforts to focus on Mass Effect and the Dragon Age game that they're working on. So like they just completely just pooped on Anthem again 2 years later, and then now it's just gone. So they're still going to keep the servers online, but the prime example is the overhyped game of the gameplay and the cinematics of when you get to the game. It's just not that fun. It's half baked. It's half worked on. It feels unfinished, and it just goes the distance. And when you get to the distance, you're left disappointed because there isn't this ever stretching reach of multiplayer hub. It's a barren. It's like a game that they meant to make in a first person story, and they threw it into the games as service category and figured, how can we link it up and make it multiplayer and make it fun for everybody? You know what, just forget about it. And that's what's upsetting. I think in the future, what they need to do is just be completely transparent with the timeline on video games as well. CD Projekt Red did that as well. To kind of help parlay some of the backlash, they said, hey, we've got a timetable of this. This is our release window for this year. This is what we're doing. Patch, free DLC, patch, big game update, future patch. So they have a timeline of what they're doing. I think if they would give that to us, everyone would have been like, oh, okay, I can kind of think now. It takes a while. Since I'm not a video game creator and they're telling me what it takes, maybe I will just calm down and play something else until then. And I think that's part of it, is the overhype train is they're not transparent with the game development cycle and what they're doing before releasing the game. I think they need to be. I think when E3 opens back up and they bring out a game onto the shelf, they bring it onto stage and they say, hey, this is the new God of War, like they've shown in the sneak trailer. Be completely transparent on writing on the wall exactly what you're doing. Hey, future release, Q4 2025, whatever. Be completely honest on the time it's going to take. And then when, throughout the year when you're showing stuff on it, say, hey, this is a sneak peek in our early development cycle, and we're looking in the next 6 months to have the game in this state, and we're going to do this. Have a marketed, structured game plan of what you're showing, and be intelligent about it. Don't just show the best glitz and glamour, like you said. And I like gameplay, but what I don't like is the interactive gameplay that they show that says it's gameplay, but really, like Watch Dogs, for example. All you saw was the walking down the streets of Chicago with your phone out and all these interactions happening. That's actually a cutscene in the game early when you take over control of Aiden, and it was actually dumbed down. So it's a walking cutscene that you really don't interact with, which is kind of trickery to be perfectly honest. But a game like Horizon Zero Dawn that we talked about had expert marketing because they showed gameplay, and everything they showed you could do, which made the game even more amazing. So I think full transparency on the development of the game and the timeline that they're going to release it, as well as like how they do all these, like they welcome to the studio and they offer people like an inside perspective. Make more awareness of all of the work, the liters of coffee, and the number of donuts you've eaten. Like make people aware of how much time and effort that you don't spend with your family, that you're working from home now, all the effort that goes into it. Make it transparent so people know. Hello, wake up. Games take sometimes 10 years to perfect. The typical development cycle for a game that's a AAA game takes 6 or 7 years to get it to a point where they are comfortable with releasing it. And that's the big ones that are successful. And I think the longer the game takes, the more it falls out of focus, and then it comes back in focus. And I think personally, they pick the wrong times to market games And when a game comes out, like Mass Effect Andromeda, I can't remember what it was, but that game released poor state. They had the eyelid glitch where you could see people's eyeballs, and it was a horrible game, and it just wasn't what it was supposed to be. They had it on the heels of all of the bad news from the third game, or the second game, or the third game's bad ending that they reworked. Then they released some new game, stepped in its face, stepped on it, and released I think it was Anthem, or it was somebody, took a lot of the hype away from Mass Effect and drove it over to another game completely. So I think that kind of internal sabotage they do with each other to say, hey, our product's going to be better, just wait 6 months or whatever. I think that plays in factor too, and it kind of pulls our attention. And gamers, we have shorter attention spans sometimes, and look, squirrel, and we kind of go off the reservation at something new. And that's why I never finish a game usually, is because something new comes out, and I gotta have it, I gotta play it. So I think if we just kind of took a chill pill as consumers and just realized, and hey, go on YouTube. We don't have to show you. Go on YouTube and look at all the behind the scenes development that it takes to make these games. You'll understand why they put so much love and attention into them, and the great ones should be the example setters. But unfortunately, in the age of media, all you hear is the bad, the negative, the disappointment, the lawsuits, the tarnished name of CD Projekt Red. They're not worried. They're not scared. They're gonna bounce back, make more money, put out a new Witcher game, and that I'm looking forward to too.
Yeah, I hope they put out a new Witcher game, because it's supposed to be about Ciri. But I mean, at the end of the day, we talk about marketing, we talk about you talk about early access games. I think one of the things that we don't see anymore is demo discs, or demos in general. Like, you see a lot of digital stuff on PlayStation Store. You see these free games of the month and stuff like that. And obviously that's lost revenue, but the game's been out for a while. I would like to see more demos, and not necessarily demos that are just the first level of the game, but I'd like to see legitimate demos. Final Fantasy 15 did a really good job with having a demo where if you played it and then you went to the actual game, it'd be like, oh, you played the demo. Here's your demo reward or whatever. I like that. I like that concept of they took time to give you a tech demo of the product, give you a feel for it, so that way it is like an early access game for you to be able to look at it. Same thing with Metal Gear Solid. They released, was it Phantom Pain or something that was actually before the other Metal Gear? I'm not a huge Metal Gear fan, but I know that it's actually supposed to be more like a tech demo, however they were released for the new
Ground
combat
Zero
system.
or something.
Yeah, it was like it was when they released it was designed to be more like a sample showing of what the next game is going to feature and how it's going to change and be different than the previous iterations of it. And that's something where early access games are great, but just like PUBG, for instance, the game that you have today versus the game that you originally had with PUBG is dramatically different. And the developer might know that. The developer might know, hey, 4 years down the road, this game is going to be dramatically different. As a consumer, that sample to it is like, okay, I can see the potential that's coming of this. It's worth me investing. And that's one of the benefits to early access is you get the money up front, and you're able to put that in development and put that into, building your game. The caveat of that is, at what point is your development team ready for early access? At what time do you do it? Do you do it right when you have a playable game? Do you do it towards 3/4 of the way through the game? Or do you do it at the end of the game, like Fortnite pretty much, and just call it early access for a year and a half? That game was not early access. Fortnite, when it came out, was completely polished, more or less. And they just had early access as its name, in its whole entire thing for a year, until a year and a half, because they were too afraid to make it an actual game, because the free-to-play method wasn't really something that I think was all that ventured at that point, other than maybe a couple MMOs that were dying. But that's where marketing comes at the end of the day. Is it's hard for us as consumers to look at a developer and say they're financially stable to survive the 6 years, where the developer might only have 4 years worth of profitability, and those last 2 years they need to find some way, whether it be through pre-orders and projective sales, and take that loss for 2 years and they'll make it up in the sales on the initial launch date, or they do early access and for 2 years they might make up only the profits for a year. But then, once again, pre-orders come in, and you only need half the pre-orders at that point to survive that last year to make a profit. And that's something that I wish that developers wouldn't share with us, and you want full transparency, what I want to see more of developers do is I want to see them not abandon projects. So take something like Skyrim, for instance, where they've released it 3-4 times. They keep on pushing it out because we keep buying it. Whereas something like Anthem, BioWare ironically kind of hurt themselves with Mass Effect because that's another BioWare game. And the second, Andromeda was done, they're just like, oh, get rid of it, hide it. And the second that Anthem went down, they're like, oh, get rid of it, hide it. We're making a new Mass Effect game. Hey, we're making Dragon Age. Like, take those projects that you spent all the time on and stand behind your product. Honestly, that's what I don't like. I don't like when a developer takes the money and runs. You know what I mean? And that's a big thing for me. Because CD Projekt Red, which is why I still hold shares in them, is because it's a company that I believe in. They did it with The Witcher 3. I believe they're going to do a Cyberpunk. It's not going to be the greatest game in the world, but they're putting in the effort. They're obviously putting in the effort with all these patches coming out. And that's for me what I want, is I want developers to care about what they're giving people. That's the ultimate marketing strategy, at the end of the day for me. I don't know about all you people at home, but I think that kind of wraps up the episode. Thank you so much, Sursona, Tim, for being on this week's episode. We really do appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dista Digital. Y'all are awesome, and hopefully I can come back again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely have to have you on. If you guys, other than Tim, you don't have to comment on this, but if someone else wants to see Tim on this episode, please leave us a comment down below, and we might bring him back on. We might. If someone says they don't like him, then we won't bring him back on. Just kidding. We might bring him back on regardless. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for being here today. And as always, if you want to reach out to us, feel free to reach out with the hashtag #DistToDigital.
And also, guys, on Discord and Facebook, where we talk about the things you love and we share some of our greatest experiences.
Yes. And from all of us here at *DistToDigital, I'm Brett Clark.
I'm Matt Keaton.
And that's
We'll catch
Tim.
you guys in the next one.
And that's Tim right there.
And I'm Tim Sursona.
Yeah. It's a work in progress, ladies and gentlemen. That outro with the third guy. We'll get it next week. Talk to you guys later.